there was just a couple of extra wrinkles that we saw occurring because, as we already saw a week or two ago, President of the United States tested positive for COVID-19. He was at the event that announced the nomination of the Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett for the Supreme Court, and Mike Lee, the senator from Ohio, Republican senator from Utah, Mike Lee was also at that event, and he just announced on October 2nd that he also tested positive for COVID-19. So fresh off of that positive announcement, at least, I'm not sure when the test was actually taken, he decided to show up at the confirmation hearing as if nothing had ever happened, partially masked. Let's take a look at his quick, close conversation with Lindsey Graham before the hearings began. I want to point out a couple things that are happening here. Mike Lee speaking very closely with Lindsey Graham, maybe about strategies, about what they're going to do for the particular day. Maybe they want to trade a couple of new germs and see what they want to get. But I want to look closely at Mike Lee's face. He's just about to finally pull the mask above his nose. So, just in case you didn't see it, I want to give like a good play-by-play there of just we've seen frustrations that people have with mask wearing and how to wear it correctly. Maybe don't drop it under your nose because there's a respiratory system that we have. You can inhale air through your mouth. You can inhale air through your nose. I don't know if people know that.
What? Breaking news on the Young Turks. Jesus.
I'm just saying, maybe you should check the CDC guidelines to maybe can guide you to the correct way to put on a mask and to understand that airways are available through both your nose and your mouth. So there's Mike Lee with his airway open and available. But that's the thing. He had a bit of a, well, actually, no, before we get to his excuse as to why he did this. He went and took his opening statement with a little bit more of an extreme look. So let's have a listen for the first 30 seconds or first few seconds of his opening statement. You don't really have to care what he has to say, just look at what he did.
Judge Barrett, you and I have a number of things in common. We're both raised in large families. In fact, we're both one of 7 children. In your case, as I recall, you're the oldest of 7 children, which means that long before you had your own 7 children, you were also the de facto mother to many others.
So I think as you could imagine, Republican senators, just like the Democratic senators were talking to a liberal nominee for the Supreme Court, they would talk about how great she is and how personable she is and how much they have in common, and they're all come from big families, things that have nothing to do with she's being nominated, but at least want to give her a human side when people are attacking things that she would rule on. So this is one of the reasons that he decided to come back to the hearing to make sure this all went down. From the Independent, they pointed out that the presence of Senator Lee assures that the Republicans will have a quorum present to move ahead with the votes in committee. So I think last week, as Cenk and Anna were pointing out, unless they have enough senators on board to push these things through, and the COVID test kind of derailed that, they want to make sure that this continues on. So continuing on, Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who's another committee member who also tested positive for the virus. He's no longer experiencing symptoms either, according to both them and their camps. And he's returned to work virtually. He did not show up in person, but Mike Lee felt that he had to at least show his face and pull another Trump. So, Senator, before I let you jump in, Emma, really quick, Lindsey Graham, who's the chair of the Judiciary Committee, he also opened proceedings saying, as to the hearing room, I doubt if there's any room in the country that's been giving more attention and detail to make sure that it's CDC compliant. So the question is, are they CDC compliant, as Lindsey Graham pointed out? From the CDC guidelines, it does say that you can be around others after you've had a positive test for these 3 components: 10 days since the symptoms first appeared, 24 hours with no fever without the use of fever-reducing medications, and other symptoms of COVID-19 are improving. The asterisk there is talking about you could potentially still have a loss of taste and all those other symptoms for longer than this, so you can understand how this is all working. But the one point I want to point out with these things, the second half of that second parameter, without the use of fever-reducing medications to lower your fever, if we remember what Mike Lee just said to Hugh Hewitt this morning was, I got my fever under control and we're regulating it in a way. There was a specific term he used that it seems like they're kind of keeping his temperature under control to make sure that he can come in. So that's the only caveat I have, but the CDC guidelines does say 10 days later. He came in and said it on October 2nd. Today is October 12th. We have exactly 10 days. The question is, should he have still done this?
I'll be participating in person. I've gotten the sign off from the Office of the Attending Physician. I've gone through the appropriate number of days, and I've been keeping my temperature under control, and I'm no longer contagious.
Well, that is great news. That's like the president is no longer a transmission threat. Given that you're not at risk of transmission, can you be closer to other people?
We'll all be seated 6 feet apart, regardless of whether we've had it.
I think it's reckless because we don't know much about this virus. I mean, I understand what the CDC guidelines say, but there is other research that says it could be a little bit longer than that. And there is conflicting information out there. We know baseline information about the efficacy of masks and how being outdoors is helpful, but we don't know everything. We are still learning day by day, which I know frustrates people. They wish that all the information was available, but that's not possible right now. So perhaps out of an abundance of caution, respect for your colleagues, respect for the reporters in the room, respect for this other member of a 7-child family, Amy Coney Barrett, respect for the people that work in the facility, maybe just don't do it. Don't go in that day, because you know who participated virtually? Kamala Harris, for one, who's on the committee, and Ted Cruz. Why did Ted Cruz participate virtually? He came into contact with Mike Lee, and he chose to self-quarantine and participated virtually. But the guy he came into contact with showed up and talked closely with Senator Lindsey Graham with his mask beneath his nose, and then took it off to go on some diatribe about big families, and also talked at length about how the judiciary is the only non-political branch in this country, which drives me insane because that's clearly not the case anymore in the year 2020 and hasn't been for many decades. So he is a bummer because Mike Lee likes to pretend he's this principled libertarian, and he can join with Bernie Sanders on anti-war bills and other things like getting out of Yemen, which I can appreciate. And I'm like, oh, this is maybe someone on the right that we could potentially work with towards some sort of solution. And then he comes out like the clown he is. It's the same thing with Rand Paul. Those are the two guys in the Senate who will work with progressives on anti-war legislation, getting out of our overseas horrific, bloody entanglements. And then they reveal themselves for who they are. They are not principled. They don't care about life. They say they care about all lives matter, but except their colleagues and everyone they're in the room with. All he needed to do would just be quarantined a little bit longer and participate virtually. But then you wouldn't be able to put on a show for your constituents and for Republicans nationally. And that's really what this was about.
Yeah, I mean, you have to make a showing of it. I mean, and again, it's follow the leader. We saw what Donald Trump did last week. So it's follow the leader, and I think Hugh would even pointed out with him because, oh, just like your buddy Trump, like you guys just come out strong and in full force. It's like as if there's some superpower that elected Republican officials have that other folks in the country don't have. Or maybe it's access to certain kind of treatment that other people in the country, maybe it's that part, I don't know.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.